Hello and welcome to Endor Model Railway. I'm Jonathan. In my last video I talked about how my derailing tender locomotive forced me to plan a layout that had bigger curves than set track first radius, and that my quick and easy solution was to buy a door to use for the base, which is 76 centimeters wide. My plan for the track was to use Pico set track for the curves and the points and some straight bits. I was going to use Code 80 Flexi track for the long straight bits purely because it's cheaper than lots of individual set track straight pieces. I bought the extra track that I needed and made a couple of loops and some sidings. However, there was a spanner in the works, a pannier tank locomotive that wouldn't go over the Insulfrog points. Before I talk any more about the locomotive, I'd just like to talk very briefly about the different types of points. For anyone watching who's brand new to railway modelling, you might not know the difference between Insulfrog and Electrofrog points. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about this because I think that information is quite easy to find, and I found loads of YouTube videos that explained it really well, and some online articles. But what it boils down to is a section of the point is either not conducting electricity or it is. Insulfrog points have a section that's electrically dead. It's insulated from the rest of the rails. Electrofrog points don't have that dead section, so it's much less likely that a locomotive can stall when going over them. Nowadays, Pico makes something called Unifrog. It can act as either an Insulfrog or Electrofrog depending on how it's wired, so they've only got one product and it can be used in either way. My very first N-gauge locomotive was a Graham Farish pannier tank, and I loved it, but I don't know what mileage it had before I bought it, and it did eventually break. The problem, I think, is that one of the gears that links onto a drive shaft or something like that has split a little bit, and so it no longer grips. The motor turns, and something in there is wearing away, but the train doesn't move. From what I googled, it's a relatively common problem and fairly terminal, I think, unless you can get a new gear. But I decided that wouldn't be worth it, and instead I bought a new, much better looking model. On the whole, the Dapol pannier runs very nicely. It is very smooth, it can run very slowly, but it really doesn't like Insulfrog points. It has to have a decent amount of momentum to make it over the insulated section, and it has a noticeable jerk when it does go over them. I was quite surprised by this because my old tank locomotives went over just fine. A Dapol 1400 class 042, which has a pretty short wheelbase, and the old Graham Farish pannier tank, which is also, well, it's got the same wheelbase as the new pannier tank. And those two old ones both went over the Insulfrog points without any trouble. Nevertheless, I really liked the new pannier tank and I wanted it to work, and there was no guarantee that future new locomotives with short wheelbases would be okay on Insulfrog points either, so I decided I would have to make the switch to Electrofrog points. I did actually already own some Electrofrog points. I'd bought them, I think, when I was a bit clueless about what the different types of track and points were, and had never actually used them. So before going out and buying lots more new track, I did some experiments, and they showed very clearly that the new pannier was quite happy on Electrofrog points. Electrofrog was the way to go. This leads me to my first top tip from Endor. Always go with live frogs, whether you buy Electrofrog points or Unifrog points wired for live. You never know if future locomotives will work on Insulfrog points. The Electrofrog points that I already had were Code 55, which means they looked a bit more realistic essentially in how tall the track is. Now, rightly or wrongly at the time, I thought that if I was going to have Electrofrog points, I would have to switch entirely to Code 55 track, and I really don't know if I just didn't do enough research on that, but that is the way I went. Whilst it turns out that that may actually have been unnecessary, I have ended up with what I think is nicer, more realistic looking track. Given that I wouldn't be able to use my existing Insulfrog points, I decided that whenever I bought new points I would make sure they'd be a minimum of medium radius. My Hallcast loco that wouldn't go around first radius main curves also, unsurprisingly, wasn't happy on tight first radius points, but it has been fine on the medium radius ones. So with track geometry and profile decided, the next step will be to crack on and get building, and I'll pick up on that in my next video. Bye bye for now.